Hey, what's happening, my fearless networking friends? Todd Falcone here. Welcome back to another episode. Wow, I was doing my A-team the other day, and somebody asked me this question: what would you do differently if you had to start all over again? And I can't even, I know I've probably been asked that question in the past, but I don't really. I was like, oh, that's a great question. And so, look, I've been, for those of you, depending on how, who you are or how long you've been following me, I've been in the business. This month is my 31st year in network marketing, 31 years. In fact, next week will mark my 31st anniversary in network marketing. So pretty long time in the business. So what would I do differently, right? There's certainly a few things I would do differently, and I'd like to share those with you in today's episode. So, all right, so when I started in network marketing, I came in and I had really high expectations. I thought, man, I'm going to be making 10 grand a month in no time. And I would say that what most people do when they have high expectations and they don't deliver on them, they get frustrated and discouraged and they quit. That's very common. I would say that I should have adjusted my expectations. I don't think I ever got to a point where I felt like quitting, but I definitely had frustration and I had discouragement, but I didn't have the, I think I'm just going to throw in the towel here. I've never been personally in that position where I felt that way, interestingly enough. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have changed my expectations to the point where it's like, look, this could take some time, and I need to operate in a way where I have enough financial runway to be able to do this. And what I mean by that, and here's where I'm going with it, is 90 days into my first network marketing business, I quit my job. And it was, for a 22-year-old kid, it was a pretty good job. I was making like $1,000 a week selling cable television door to door. And 90 days into that game, I quit my job. And think about it, 22-year-old kid. I not only had to work like less than 10 hours a week to make $1,000 a week. That would have actually fed me and given me, enough cash flow and money to survive. Because immediately, like when I got to the 90-day mark and I quit my job and I wasn't making $10 a month, that put me into a desperation mode. It put me into a mode of like need, right? Like I needed it bad because it was like I wasn't going to eat if I didn't make a sale, and that's a really hard position to be coming from, this position of desperation and need. And so that actually leads me to, I guess, the next thing that I would have done differently is even if or when you are coming from a position of desperation or need, if you show your cards, it's not going to work out for you. So, like, I had to learn the hard way. Like, I was coming from desperation and need, and even though I wasn't saying, please join my business, oh my gosh, I need you, it came out that way until I started to, I actually did a training on this recently, and until I started to harness the power of projection. And I'm not going to get that into that in today's episode, but it's really about, like, I'll give you a quick little insight on it. It's about how would you act if you were making X amount of dollars a month? Would you act differently? Would you carry yourself differently? And I thought at one point, I was like, man, this desperation thing ain't working for me. Well, what if I was making 10 grand a month? How would I carry myself? I would carry myself a little taller. I would talk a little bit differently. I would talk a little more confidently. I would certainly wouldn't be chasing the prospect 17 times and trying to get them into my business. So that to me is another big lesson, is like I would not have come in, even if I was desperate, I wouldn't have shown my cards, right? The desperation cards. Another huge one is, and I learned this in 1991 at the Bonaventure Hotel in LA, and it was a pretty big one. When I joined my business, like, I don't know what, like, I've always been a jokester and, kind of been the guy that makes my buddies laugh. But when I started in network marketing, I was like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, I got into business. I guess I got to be serious. And so I was really serious. And I think I was too serious. I was too grinding. And it was like, I don't think I grit my teeth like that or look like that. But the intensity of my seriousness, I think, pushed people away. And I was with my buddy Jim, and he was super funny guy. And I was with him at the Bonaventure Hotel, and this guy was on stage, and he was doing this character, and he was basically teaching this lesson about lighten up, have a good time, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. And I remember my sponsor looked at me. He was on my right, and he looks at me and he goes, ha, ha, ha. He goes, that's you, Falcone. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm like way too serious. And so then and there, I started to lighten up and, just have fun. And it was interesting. People started to want to be around me or want to join my business because I decided to lighten up a little bit. So that was another, if I did it all over again, hey, start from the beginning, be serious, but lighten up and have a good time. Another one, and this is the answer that I gave this person the other day in my A team was, if when you go from employed to self-employed, like especially young for me, I was like 22 and I didn't have any business background at all. Here I am self-employed. When you become a self-employed independent entrepreneur, you have these tax write-offs, these deductions that you don't have as a W-2 employee. And so I was like, I didn't know what I could write off and what I couldn't. I was throwing receipts away. I wasn't keeping great records. And I had this Suzanne. Okay, I remember her name now. Suzanne was my first accountant. And she was like, well, where's all your receipts? And I'm like, I didn't save them. She's like, are you kidding me? She's like, well, I can't, and she's like, and she like went through all these things with me on what you should save. And so it took me like 2 years to realize what I should have been, saving receipts for and keeping records on. So I would have been like, keep good records from the beginning of time and make sure you save every single receipt for every single bit of business building stuff that you do, because that reduces your taxable income and increases your take-home pay, right? So that would be another probably do-over, I guess. Oh my goodness. It's so funny as I'm doing this, I'm like coming up with all these things. There was another time where, and this was in the moment of desperation, and some of you guys have heard me teach on this subject, like success is repeating the things that work and deleting the things that don't work. So one of the times I was in a position of desperation. I had this lady, she was going to join, and she was going to come to the Saturday meeting and bring her money and go to the training and all this, and she didn't show up at 10 o'clock, and it was 11. By the end of it, she didn't show up. And I was so like distraught, and I needed her to join. I needed the commissions, right? And she like never showed up. And then she never returned my calls. Like she ghosted me is the new term today, right? And I called her voicemail, and I was like, you blah, 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 rah, 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 rah. And I just went off, like I just lost it, right? And then, which was off. I knew when I did it, it was just stupid. And then like 2 or 3 days later, I'm answering my phone at my desk. Good afternoon, this is Todd. And it was like, yeah, Todd, this is Mr. Such and Such. And I knew exactly what it was because the CEO of the company. He's like, I heard the voicemail this lady played for me. What you cussed. And I was like, oh, and he goes, if you ever do that again, you're never going to be involved in network marketing, let alone walk again. I mean, I was like, it was bad. And I knew it, right? I knew it when I did it. Sometimes like we say things, put it back in your mouth, but it was too late. So I never did that again. And so the lesson is like, don't let your emotions get the most of you. Don't let and that wasn't the last time, by the way, I let my emotions get the most of me. There were a lot of times where early on, like if somebody didn't join, I would call and I would call and I would call. And it was just like, just like if somebody's not responding to you and you've left them 2 or 3 messages and they have not returned your call, they're probably not interested. Probably time to give them some space and let it go. So we learn these lessons that we would do things differently. I know for sure early on in my career, I probably called people, 10, 15 times without a return call back. And, I guess back then we didn't have caller ID, so they couldn't tell who was calling. But now they got it. If you call somebody like 15 times, they're like, seriously, man, you're desperate. Nobody likes to join a desperate person, right? And isn't interesting, like a lot of things I'm sharing that I would do differently evolve or, are around the subject of desperation. Nobody wants to join a desperate person. Nobody you get to that beggy pleady zone, it's too late. So don't do it, right? What else? What else would I say has been something I would do differently? I think for sure that I would I would probably I thought I was a good student. Maybe I was a decent student, I guess. And so if somebody who was more successful than me told me to do something, I just don't question it anymore. I did a few times where I, try, even though I didn't have, I'm guilty of these things that I teach. Like some of the things that I teach these things because I learned them the hard way. So certainly like if somebody were to say, look, I've got this, use this, do it this way. And then you forget it, I'm going to do it my own way. And then you flop flat on your face. It's your fault, right? So, when somebody, the phrase that I learned, if you want to be successful, find somebody who has what you want and do what they do. So if somebody's willing to teach you how to do something, then do it over again and do it exactly as they teach it to you, not your own way. Don't even try to put your own spin on it. one thing that I'll say, I'll actually end with this. I haven't actually done this myself, but I think it's something that I've seen as so prevalent and I think is awful. So I mean, I definitely have not been guilty of this, is when you start making money. Well, first of all, I mean, guilty. When you start making money and you got nothing, you start to upgrade your life a little bit. You maybe get new carpet in your house, or you get a nicer TV, or maybe you get a nicer house, or you know, that's natural, right? We start to, you know, we make more money and we start to kind of, you know, improve our lifestyle. And I've always, you know, I mean, I live like right now, the house that I'm doing this video in is a really nice house. I mean, it's not some, I mean, what's the square footage of this house? 3,300, 3,500 square feet, 4 bedroom, 3 bath. I mean, it's like you wouldn't drive by my house and go, oh my gosh, the lifestyles of the rich and famous guy lives there. Even though I could go and buy a bigger house and try to like show the money, show me the money. I got past that. Like, you know, after a little while, you kind of realize that money in the bank is sexier than having some, you know, this giant yacht and this thing. And then, look, I mean, if that's your thing, go for it. That's all you. But I'd rather have the money in the bank and investments and the, you know, the, I don't know, the calming effect of knowing you have liquid assets. But I've seen a lot of friends of mine, and they have made this mistake where they totally overextended and they bought the huge house with a $10,000 mortgage, and then the boat that cost them $3,000 a month, and then the cars that cost them $3-4 a month, and then all the jewelry and the fancy stuff. And they're like so leveraged to the hilt. It's like, look, you know what? If you can't pay cash for it, you shouldn't buy it. If you can't go, if you got this toy that you want to buy, but you got to take a loan to get the toy, you shouldn't buy the toy. You're not ready to buy you cannot afford the toy because, well, you can't afford the toy because you had to borrow money for it. So the reason I say that, no, that's not a lesson I had to learn personally because I've been really good with my money, is I have had friends who their checks have adjusted, and when they adjusted, they had to like sell everything. And if you're trying to sell your Rolex watch collection when you're in desperation, call me up because I'll buy them, because guaranteed you're going to get like, you know, 25% of the price that you could do on the open market if you weren't in the pressure situation to sell it, or your boat or your car or whatever the stuff is. I've had friends had to just totally sell everything. And when you're selling everything in desperation, you ain't going to get nearly the value that you would get if you're just like, I'm just kind of over this thing. Like I had a Rolex one time that I sold, and I wasn't in any rush to sell it. So the right guy came along and he offered me the price. I was like, cool, done. I made money on the watch, right? So when you start making money, sure, upgrade your life a little bit, but make sure you don't overextend yourself. And a lot of people do that. And again, I'm sure there's a bunch of other lessons that I have learned along the way, but those are a few things that I would do differently. And then one thing that I guess I wouldn't do differently because it didn't apply to me. But, well, listen, I don't know where you're at. Are you on my podcast on audio? Awesome. If you're on YouTube, amazing as well. You can find this episode, all the details of it, other stuff, great free training at my website, toddfalcone.com/episode 89 is this episode. So that's where you'll catch it, toddfalcone.com/episode 89. Hope you're having an amazing day. Stay fearless, my friends. We'll see you on the next episode.